Section 1. The Hidden Failure. The Cold War's end is often taught as a tidy conclusion in textbooks and headlines. We prefer binary stories, win versus lose, because they're simple to compute. But systems don't flip like switches. After collapse, a vacuum must be filled. Berlin, 1989. Crossing points open and the wall begins to come down. Moscow, 1991. The Soviet flag is lowered as the Union dissolves by decree. Commentators expected a unipolar order, one center coordinating rules and finance. Yet confidence, not force, decides whether others follow those rules. Imagine Washington, amid recession and diplomatic missteps, fails to signal reliability. The USSR still collapses. Its command economy lagged badly in computing and microchips, but no actor fills the gap. Multiple poles emerge and transact on their own terms. Lower trust raises friction. Insurance premia, reroutes, and extra checks inflate delivered cost. Victory requires consolidation, projecting stability, building rules, and reliable institutions. If America falters, regional hedging becomes rational. Alliances split, trade diversifies, and positions straddle. Roadmap, baseline, first-order alliance and economic breaks, second-order tech divergence, escalation, altered long-term state, unseen consequence. We will cite mechanisms, feedback loops, payment rails, and standards, not slogans. Question: if the Cold War ended without a clear winner, which invisible system you rely on would fail first? Like, comment, and subscribe to share yours. In the late 1980s, the United States sat at the functional center of a global network built on decades of post-war consensus. This wasn't just a position of influence, it was the operating system for global stability. Military, economic, and diplomatic power were deeply interwoven. Each element reinforced the others, creating a predictable environment where commitments were clear and rules were understood. In Europe, the NATO security guarantee underwrote decades of peace and economic integration. In Asia, bilateral alliances with economic powerhouses like Japan and South Korea provided a similar anchor of stability. Economically, the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency provided immense leverage and a baseline of stability, lowering transaction costs for everyone operating within the system. Confidence in global trade depended on these secure sea lanes, guaranteed by naval presence in critical choke points. Technologically, a powerful public-private university engine drove innovation, creating a formidable lead. American-developed standards in computing, software, and early internet protocols became the world's default norms. But this entire structure rested on a single, intangible asset: trust. Now, alter the timeline. In 1991, a sharp recession and a series of diplomatic blunders begin to sap that confidence. Partners who had banked on American predictability start to doubt its reliability. An inward pivot in Washington signals that long-standing commitments are becoming conditional. Certainty phrased slowly at first, almost invisibly. But the systems built upon it inevitably follow. When trust dips, alliances crack, costs rise, and fragmentation compounds. The question becomes, what breaks first when the guarantor steps back? Budgets, borders, or the bill of lading? Security guarantees that felt absolute become conditional. Europe recalculates its own defense. Asian partners hedge and diversify ties. Interests diverge as assumptions change. New pacts emerge without Washington. NATO cohesion faces unprecedented strain. Pull back the guarantor and risk reprices freight, insurance, and delivered cost. Insurers charge more for contested lanes. Reroutes add time, fuel, and uncertainty. Just-in-time becomes just-in-case and slow. Parallel payment rails arise as China and a recovering Russia build alternatives. Infrastructure and access deals onboard regions into the new bloc. Competing standards segment markets and logistics. Central banks diversify reserves, slowly, steadily away from the dollar. Higher yields mean deficits cost more to finance. A quiet signal, but one that rewrites incentives worldwide. Technology flows like water, toward capital, talent, and trust. As the magnet weakens, currents change direction. New hubs recruit talent and scale capital. Thousands of small career and grant choices aggregate into a structural shift. Multiple centers yield incompatible standards. A splinter net, parallel, semi-closed networks. Devices and services need multiple versions. Divergence expands cyber attack surfaces. Offense and defense surge. Power, money, and communications become contested terrain. The dream of one open network yields to guarded gateways. A more suspicious, less connected digital world raises costs and stress for everyone. Grand shifts that begin in the halls of power don't stay there. Eventually, they reach the kitchen table. For businesses, the new landscape of disruptions and tariffs forces a painful calculus: absorb the costs, pass them on, or move. This triggers a wave of downsizing, relocations, and inevitable price hikes for consumers. As new protected blocks form, procurement contracts that once crossed oceans are now kept inside fortified economic walls. The resulting job losses aren't just statistics. They ripple directly into community budgets, gutting public services, and eroding civic trust. History, from the post-Soviet 90s to other fragile states, shows a clear pattern. When state capacity collapses, it creates a vacuum that invites crime and corruption. If this system's approach helps, compare an example below. Like, comment, subscribe. This creates a vicious cycle. Economic stress feeds institutional distrust, which in turn raises insurance and financing costs for everyone, squeezing the economy again. Suddenly, essentials and electronics climb in price as these new risk premiums spread through every supply chain. The world of abundant choice narrows. Delays for even basic goods lengthen from weeks to months. Into this frustration steps a familiar force. Populism offers simple answers, promising protection from outside threats, and, crucially, someone to blame. The resulting policies tighten borders and raise new barriers. International cooperation, once assumed, stalls. This political volatility inevitably shows up at the polls and, when grievances feel ignored, spills into the streets. It all leads to a critical question. When domestic trust thins and national arms budgets rise, what happens at the border? Multipolar competition replaces single-pole deterrence. Threats feed spending, which feeds rival threats. Even in our world, 2024 saw the sharpest rise since the Cold War. Broad-based increases. In this timeline, that cycle starts earlier and runs hotter. Guns crowd out classrooms, clinics, and roads. Local disputes attract patrons, turning skirmishes into proxy tests. Diplomats have already compared today's strain to 1962, a near-constant baseline here. Less trust begets more arms and more risk. The stability dividend evaporates, and the bill arrives everywhere. The unipolar moment never arrives. Major blocs compete across economics, security, and tech. Firms maintain parallel supply chains, expensive and redundant. Sanctions, tariffs, and embargoes become standard tools. Visas tighten. The internet fractures into guarded walled gardens. States widen surveillance in the name of security. Diversity grows in politics, economies, and culture amid constant competition. The deepest change isn't new powers or tariffs. It's the absence of a shared belief in universal progress. Multiple ideologies compete. None win global consent. Borderless problems meet zero-sum incentives. Institutions, our guardrails, thin and fray. Small shocks cascade faster without trust and norms. History doesn't end, it compounds, unless constraints reset the loop. How much peace relies not on strength, but on the fragile assumption of trust? If you found value here, like, comment your takeaway, and subscribe. Your input shapes which systems we investigate next. What scenario should we explore next? Share your ideas below. You've been watching Ifverse, where imagination meets possibility. See you in our next reality.